This thing just makes cycling a whole lot more easy than it ever has been before. It's really quite strange that after spending your whole life just knowing as a fact that hills are hard to get up and wind is hard to cycle against, suddenly it's not the case. And that takes a bit of time to get your head around that when you first cycle these things. It means you can probably reconsider your route to work if you already cycle. I certainly try and avoid hills as much as I can, but if I was on an e-bike, that's suddenly far less of an issue. So you might be able to take a much more direct route to work, or indeed a more scenic route. It might be that your scenic route to work is hillier than the one you choose to take. Again, you don't have to worry about hills on this thing, so that might be one of the big advantages. But from a commuting point of view, I think the biggest advantage of all is the fact that I'm not working too hard means I'm not out of breath, I'm not sweating, it means I don't get to work in a state where I have to then off the bike, shower and add extra time on that side of things. So one of the huge advantages from a commuting point of view is that you can jump on this bike, cycle to work, arrive at the back door, and you'll still be as fresh as when you left the house. You can simply lock the bike away and just, in my case, head up to the office and sit down and start working. There's none of the delays, there's none of the hassles of having to take gear to work to shower. So again, if that's one of your major concerns about, I'd be interested in cycling, but either my workplace doesn't have showering facilities or it's just an extra hassle that I don't want to have to think about. Again, this thing takes that whole issue out of the equation. Certainly one of the biggest advantages from a commuting point of view. But the other ones are just the obvious ones I've talked about. Yep, it opens up cycling to whole new audiences who, for fitness reasons or perhaps age of life or whatever it might be, maybe not cycling now. If you can ride a bike, you can ride one of these pretty much anywhere, take on any hills and take on any conditions. It'll also be a great bike for families. I have a couple of babies at home. Fairly soon I'm going to be looking to put them in a trailer and take them out on family days out. That can be quite a bit of weight once they start to grow and put on extra weight. This thing here again would be ideal for hitching the trailer up the back and the battery help pull the little ones along. Same if you want to put some bags on it and use it as a nice easy quick way of going for shopping. Again, you don't have to worry about carrying the weight of the shopping home. The bike's going to do probably the majority of the work for you. So anything that involves weight or pulling a load, again, these things really would be ideal for it. So what are the disadvantages? Well, the most obvious one is the cost of the bike initially. The model that I'm riding costs upwards of £2,000, which is a hell of a lot of money. Certainly to me it is. I know people will happily spend thousands on a normal non-powered bike. Certainly not the kind of money that I've ever spent on a bike. But yeah, this one's over £2,000, which certainly a very expensive investment. But they do come in cheaper. You can now buy them for well under £1,000 and all points in between. But even at the £1,500, £2,000 mark, where you're getting a really good, strong, robust bike with a good range on it, if you take into account how much you'll spend on perhaps a second car to commute to work, all the costs involved in that, not just the car itself, but obviously fuel and the cost of parking, an e-bike starts to make a little bit more sense. The monthly payments on this would be a good deal less than you're spending every month in total running a car. And of course, once you pay it off, the bike's yours. You've got hopefully a good few years of really enjoyable travel ahead of you for next to no cost. You know, there's literally pennies to charge this thing up every few days or so. So yeah, cost is definitely the big issue in terms of acquiring an e-bike, but if you can deal with that and maybe offset it against the effective cost of running a second car to work every day, if you can deal with that, there are precious little few other disadvantages. Perhaps the only other one that I found in my week or so with this bike is because it has that big battery in there, and by its very nature it has suspension and nice big comfortable tyres and whatnot. It is a much heavier bike than certainly anything I normally cycle, and that means manoeuvring it is a little bit more difficult. We have bike hooks at work, and getting this up onto the hooks is certainly uses the upper body muscles a bit more than a normal bike does. I'm lucky at home that I have a garage, so getting the bike into the garage isn't a problem for me, but I do know my colleague who tried one of these out at the same time, she stays a few stories up in flats, and certainly getting the bike somewhere secure for her was one of the hassles that certainly she struggled with. If you have storage at ground floor level, you're laughing, but if you don't, yeah, getting these up flights of stairs is not the easiest thing in the world. So yeah, general manoeuvrability once you're off the bike and you're trying to store it, I think again is one of the disadvantages when comparing it to a normal bike. And again, the big advantage comes up as I get closer to my work. I'm not thinking here about where am I going to park, or am I going to find a space, or will the car park be open. This thing will take me right to the door of my workplace. So would I recommend an e-bike? Well, if cycling to work is something you've thought about but for whatever reason been put off the idea of cycling on a normal bike, I would say definitely give one of these things a try. You don't have to buy one initially. There are lots of places that will let you hire one for a day to try it out. But hopefully you can see how easy it is to get around on these things. This bike, it has all its suspension, so this cobbled road, which would normally be a real bone shaker to cycle up, not too much of an issue at all on this bike. But yeah, if you're fed up driving to work, you're fed up the costs involved in that, you're fed up with issues around parking and just the delays, traffic and roadworks, I think you'd be really pleasantly surprised at how much fun something like an e-bike turns your commute into. Far from being the part of the day that I dread, it's now probably the part of the day I most look forward to, whether it's coming to work, arriving nice and fresh and awake when I get there, or at the end of the day as well. Good thing to get on the bike and just chill out. Again, because I'm on a bike, I can use this pedestrian zone which would otherwise be closed off to me as motor traffic. So you have a very direct way of getting around. Cities are getting more and more bike friendly as they realise that we're going to have to do something about the number of cars on the road. There just isn't the capacity anymore for the number of cars that are trying to use them. So that's me going door to door. It's me arriving at work, and as I say, completely refreshed, not out of breath at all, haven't broken sweat. All I need to do now is hang the bike up and go up to the office.